Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Meredith Hoskin. I'm president of the City of Alameda Democratic Club. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. For the past 40 years, we've been the local chartered group for the Democratic Party here in Alameda. Our work isn't just about attending meetings and hosting programs. It's a chance to get involved in real campaign work, connect with state and national party leaders, and like here, learn how future Democratic leaders are chosen at every level and to have a voice in those selections as well. So email us at alameda.demo@gmail.com to get involved. So, why are we all here this evening? After a tough election year for Democrats, for which we're seeing the dire consequences currently in action, the club is activating a new program to foster more dialogue, broaden our perspective, and hear from new Democratic voices with diverse perspectives, just to help us understand what happened and how we can win, following our big tent strategy, because we need all of us in the fight with what's happening now. So today we're going big and we're going bold, focusing first on media. And we are so fortunate to have Cenk Uygur, founder and co-host of the Young Turks, the largest online independent news network. Online media isn't a new phenomenon, as you all know, but it played a particularly impactful role in this last election and continues to in politics. The Young Turks started in 2002 as a radio show before pioneering online broadcast news in 2005 and is now a multi-channel network reaching millions and millions, a lot of them young people. And of course, I have to give a disclosure that CADC does not necessarily support or agree with all of the ideas presented during this forum, but really welcome his perspective on this particular topic. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Evan Gomez, who is going to introduce you all to Cenk.
Thanks, Meredith. And for the sake of transparency, I am a sustaining member of TYT, but I also don't always agree or co-sign with their points of view. I also donate to PBS and NPR and don't expect to agree with everything that they publish either. And, they say that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I think that if you agree with everyone and everything around you, then you're probably in a bubble. So, Cenk, as a progressive Democrat, you often say that we should fight for someone we don't know and to have an open heart and an open mind. So, can you tell us about how TYT achieves that goal and how the audience is also part of the show?
Yeah, so we're been around a long time, as you guys explained. Been online now for about 20 years, oldest show in internet history. First partner channel for YouTube, and I tell you all that because that connects us to the audience. So we have an umbilical cord to the audience. We get hundreds of thousands of comments every day, and I read a lot of them. And that's how I know what's coming, sometimes a little bit ahead of others, because you just have to listen to the people. A lot of other people in media and politics never bother listening to the audience, the voters, etc. So people participate in the show through chats when we're live. We're live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. They're members and they fund us. And so that way we're financially connected to our viewers. And I think that that's a better model in media. But look, you could always run into issues. You could even run into audience capture issues. So you've got to be careful. And so that leads to the open minds and open hearts. So for us, we have a mission statement at TYT, boldly pursue the truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. So if you're not open-hearted, you're not going to try to drive positive change. And if you're not open-minded, you're not going to boldly pursue the truth. And so you've got to be all of those things if you actually want to bring some, justice into the world and positive change. And so we do try to do that. And obviously a lot of people agree and a lot of people disagree. And so they'll say, hey, no, we don't agree with your approach for what's going to drive positive change. Like you said, Evan, no problem. That's great. I love that. So let's all air out our opinions. And that's why I'm open-minded. That's why our community is open-minded. And there's people all over the political spectrum, especially on our side on the left, that I think have great ideas. And by the way, I'm far left on some issues. I'm centrist left on other issues, and that's because I have my own mind and independent judgment, and that's what I want every voter to think. And the last thing on that, Evan, is that if people tell you that you must adhere to a strict ideology, they're saying, do not use your mind. Don't have independent judgment. I'm going to tell you what the ideology is, and then you're going to follow it obediently. Don't do that. Okay. Open up your minds and make up your own mind and your own decisions. And then, by the way, that has political ramifications too. So, last thing for now on this is that now you go to the establishment part of the Democratic Party, and they've been anointing leaders, and it's been an absolute disaster. So don't have an open mind. Just vote for Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's definitely going to win. Bernie Sanders is definitely going to lose. Well, how did that closed mind work for us? Didn't work out very well, right? Don't worry, Joe Biden's young and dynamic. Don't open your mind. Don't try to see if he's actually having mental decline issues. No, just go with Joe Biden. Don't ever question, right? How did that turn out for us? Turned out terribly. We're going to anoint Kamala Harris. Please don't. Let's have some sort of primary. Nope, close mind, close mind. And it's led to disaster.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. And I know that on the show you've talked about those exact same opinions, but also that you voted for Hillary and Harris and Biden in 2020. So I just wanted to contextualize that for our viewers as well, that even though you have those opinions, at the end of the day, you knew which choice was going to be the right choice for you and what you feel the country is. Would you say that that's a fair characterization?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that those are hard questions. So, why was I against Hillary Clinton in the 2016 primary? Because number one, I agree with Bernie more, and that's the point of a primary. But number two, I can read a poll, which apparently separates me from almost everyone on cable news. And Bernie Sanders did better against Donald Trump in almost every poll. On election day, he had a 12-point lead on Trump. I know that they would have run a campaign and they would have run a campaign against Bernie, and maybe that knocks down some of that. But Bernie would have run a campaign against Trump. So in all the polling, Bernie had a better chance of winning, but everybody on cable news told you the opposite. That's why I get so frustrated with the rest of the media. And before, people that were more traditional Democratic voters wouldn't believe us. And then this election was a spectacular example of that. So we kept saying on the Young Turks, for God's sake, Biden's going to lose. Not only is he too old, he's in the 30s in approval ratings. Incumbents in the 40s almost always lose. Incumbents in the 30s, it requires several miracles for them to win. So what I kept telling everyone is, if you want to beat Donald Trump, you've got to actually challenge your own. You've got to challenge power within the Democratic Party. That doesn't mean you hate the Democratic Party. That means you love the Democratic Party and you want it to be better. You want it to be stronger. And unfortunately, most of the power establishment within the Democratic Party said, no, let's pick the weakest candidate because he's our current leader and we always obey and we always bow down to the current leader. Well, that's what's made the party so weak that they lost to Trump twice. So did I want to pick a stronger leader, one that had a better chance of winning in those elections? Yes. Did it turn out, unfortunately, that in hindsight, that at a minimum, I was at least half right? The guys that I thought were going to lose did lose, right? We can't know if Bernie was going to win, but I think there was excellent evidence in both of those 2016 and 2020. But even so, guys, if you don't agree with me, it doesn't matter. We should always be for a strong primary so we get our best candidate. Even if it's one that disagrees with me, so what? That's a democracy. And so if you close things down and you just trust your leaders, you get the debacle that happened in 2024. But why did I vote for Kamala, Hillary, et cetera? And I'm very anti-establishment. And it's fair to say that I think that they are pro-establishment. So why did I vote for them? Because their policies are way better than Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's a loose cannon and a bit of a maniac. So I don't think that's a hard question at all. So, and I think the reason why people even think it's a question is because mainstream media has told you that if you question the so-called leaders of our party, that that's a form of heresy and that you're helping the other side. No, you're helping the other side when you don't demand the strongest leaders for the Democratic Party, because the weak leaders have lost time and time again. Please, everybody, open up your minds. Let's have real primaries. and pick the best candidates.
So that's a really powerful opinion. And I know that you've discussed, at least in your book, about having an opinion when you feel like it's something that it's not worth being neutral about. Or maybe a better way to put that is that there almost is no neutrality. So I'm going to play a short clip from your book, Justice is Coming.
The media's job is not to be an attractive brand, but to tell the truth. They're supposed to deliver facts, not tell readers and audiences what they want to hear. Imagine that an unnamed senior administration official says 2 plus 2 equals 6, and a mathematician says it's 4. The job of the New York Times is not to call it 5 to try to make everybody happy. Facts are stubborn things, as John Adams said. Neutrality is, by definition, not objective. It's an arbitrary midpoint between two political positions. The purpose of being neutral is to achieve political correctness rather than factual correctness. This is inarguable, yet no one in media acknowledges it. By the way, what if both sides are wrong? Then neutrality is the midpoint between two wrong points. This is obviously ridiculous, yet it is universally accepted as the gold standard of journalism in the mainstream press. If someone is saying it's raining and someone else says it isn't, the job of the media isn't to report that people disagree about the weather. Its job is to stick its collective head out the window and see if there's any goddamn rain.
So I think another way to phrase that is that, in your opinion, neutrality can imply that there are no hard facts. So I'd like it if you could elaborate on how taking a side can be more truthful, right? We hear sometimes about sane washing Donald Trump, and the ways which online media may reach that goal, in your view, while legacy media might not.
Yeah, my whole life, mainstream media has been covering for Republicans and saying that everything is 50-50. And no, there are things that are true in the world, right? And so I'm not asking the media to just say the Democrats are right about everything. I would hate that. And when they do, I call them out on that. I want actual objective reporting. I don't want them to lean in any direction, because it's like we have our own opinions. We don't need the media's opinions. We need facts. So, okay, so classic example is Iraq War. The Republicans, Bush, Cheney, it's the neocons, said that the attackers on 9/11 came from the same region as Iraq. So they heavily implied that Iraq had attacked us on 9/11. And the media gave that an enormous amount of coverage. The Democrats were very, very weak. A lot of them, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, Joe Biden, all voted for the Iraq War, and they barely fought back against Bush. So the media was like, well, okay, I guess the Republicans keep saying that Iraq attacked us, and the Democrats aren't saying much. So I guess we'll find, the midpoint of that cacophony of noise and propaganda, and we'll say, okay, yes, we'll leave the general impression that Iraq attacked us. And that's why 7 out of 10 Americans, when we went to war with Iraq, thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. Well, that's a lie. That's not even close to true. Saddam Hussein was a terrible guy, but he was an enemy of Al Qaeda who attacked us. In fact, he'd kill Al Qaeda pretty indiscriminately. So it was a giant, giant lie that the mainstream media got 7 out of 10 Americans to believe, while pretending to be neutral and pretending to be objective. So it's just a disaster in every way. And so I can give you 1,000 examples from the Biden administration and from the Trump administration. And so, and telling the truth is a hard business. It's not easy. Part of the reason why mainstream media does it is they want access to power. They want to serve power, and they are multi-billion-dollar corporations, so they're the rich and powerful themselves. They want the same tax cuts that Republicans keep passing. They want the same deregulation, and they privilege their own bias as if it's objective. It's doubly toxic, in my opinion. So, but when we tell the truth on TYT, people get upset. And so if you say the Republicans are wrong, the Republicans are going to get upset with you. And from time to time, we say our own side is wrong. And then people get furious. They're like, no, I don't want what is true. I want you to tell me that Joe Biden is young and dynamic and the very best candidate in America. If you don't tell me that, I'm going to get super upset. If you tell me that crime actually did rise between 2019 and 2023, even though it's true, I'm going to get super upset. And I don't want you to say that. Sorry, that's not what we do. We try to actually do real journalism. It doesn't mean that you don't have perspective. I clearly have a perspective, right? But you've got to be honest about the facts. The facts should be non-negotiable.
Thank you for that. So I think this would actually be you covered one of the questions that I wanted to ask in terms of just where media, the money comes from in media and how it can influence it. And actually, at the top of this, you had mentioned audience capture as well. I would love to know if there was a time when you feel like pushback, whether it was maybe warranted or not, from your audience, your base, changed your mind about something or changed the way that you're reporting about it. Because sure, you could say, well, TYT does not generally take corporate money, but that doesn't make the audience not a constituency, right? Like they must have some say in things.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting dynamic because we want to be powered by the people, and we think that that's a better way of doing it. So do I have open mind towards what the audience is saying? Definitely. Have they changed my mind from time to time? Yes. I give you a specific example in a second. But at the same time, if all you do is follow the audience, there's a couple of different problems there. Number one, what if the audience doesn't want the truth? And it doesn't mean all of the audience, but it could be a majority of the audience or a sizable portion of the audience. So I know because we've paid a lot of heavy price from fellow Democrats for telling the truth about a couple of different things. I'll give you examples of that in a second too. Um, and so you've got to find the right balance. If you're ignoring your audience, that's crazy. That's what mainstream media does, and it's not the way to go. It's not new media. It's not a good strategy, and it's not morally right. It's just not right in any way, shape, or form. But if you get led around by the audience and they get you to say things that aren't true, that doesn't help either. So for folks that are unfamiliar with the concept, first let me explain audience capture. So a good example is Jimmy Dore. So Jimmy used to be here, but he went sideways on us. Okay, so he's on his own, and he does a video where he explains that he got a vaccine, and then he's generally fine. And that video doesn't do too well. It gets like 20,000 views or something for him. That's not that great. Now, and I'm doing this roughly from memory. Okay. So then he does a video about how, well, you know what? Actually, come to think of it, I took the vaccine and I got a little problem with my shoulder. Hey, that one does great. I got like 200,000 views. The next time, oh, I got a problem with the back because of the vaccine. Oh, that one did great too. 250,000 views. Again, these numbers are super rough, right? But somebody did a story on it, 20 videos in a row, because the audience preferred stories where he pretended that the vaccine was a problem. So he's like, well, I like making money. I like having more viewers. So I'll tell them what they want to hear, that the vaccine was problematic. That's a disaster, right? That's audience capture. Joe Rogan, in a lot of ways, audience capture. He started out as a guy who's independent and populist and endorsed Bernie in 2016, but his guests were very right wing. He had a bunch of left wingers on, but way more right wingers. So his audience started to slowly become more and more right wing. And then Joe doesn't need money. He doesn't need clout and status and all that stuff. But define your own audience is super hard. So then he gets dragged a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more to the right wing. And so now he's still independent, but to the right. And so that's audience capture. So you can't. So how did we define? Well, we've defined it in 100 different ways. But when Obama first got elected, we fought for Obama tooth and nail. We fought for him in the primary against Hillary Clinton. Or we fought for him against John McCain. And then he started drilling in the Gulf, and he started doing all these things that were not what he promised. And so I started calling him out about 3-4 months into his administration. I was like, I mean, I want to root for him, but we're not in favor of drilling in the Gulf. And then, of course, the BP disaster happened, and it turned out drilling in the Gulf was a terrible idea. But when we said Obama shouldn't drill in the Gulf or criticize them in other ways from the left, we lost a whole bunch of paying members because they had come because they like Obama and they liked that we supported Obama. Now we're criticizing Obama. They didn't like that, so they left. You've got to have the courage and the strength to be able to say, I'm sorry, brothers and sisters, but I got to tell you what's real and not what you want to hear. Also true of Joe Biden being too old. It didn't help the Democratic Party to keep him in the race. But no matter how much we said it, some portion of the audience was upset about it. I get it, but if we did that, we just wind up like anybody else going into a rabbit hole of extremism, etc. And then obviously we've had some dust ups, if you will, with some on the far left as well. And so that's the reference to crime doesn't really exist. It's the right wing narrative. Meanwhile, Oakland is recalling their mayor 65 to 35. So it, they apparently the voters of Oakland, very progressive, very left wing, very democratic, thought that crime did exist, and they didn't like it. So we got to tell the truth. So that's how you avoid audience capture. But if you're not listening to your audience at all, you're lost. Then you're on an ego trip. So here I'll give you the example of how audience member changed my mind. First of all, I used to be Republican when I was growing up, and I still held on to some of those views when we started the Young Turks. And I'm not going to win over any fans here by telling you that I was pro death penalty. And but I was, and I had an hour-long debate with Mario Cuomo on it when on our show back in like 2004 or so. But it wasn't Mario Cuomo who changed my mind. It was a caller, I think Chris from Virginia, and a whole bunch of folks changed my mind on a bunch of issues. So on the death penalty, it was an easy one. And of course, the real heroes there are the Innocence Project. They showed that we were killing the wrong people. We had dozens of people on death row who didn't do it. It's one thing to kill the right guy. That's could already be problematic enough. But who's monstrous enough to kill the wrong guy, an innocent guy? So when I saw the evidence, I immediately opposed the death penalty. I think Chris from Virginia convinced me about the estate tax. So I thought, well, I mean, it does seem like double taxation. They got taxed on it originally, and then when they died, they get taxed on it again. And Chris made a great point. He's like, no, 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 no. Conrad Hilton got taxed once. When he passes on to his granddaughter, Paris Hilton, she's paying tax for the first time. And by the way, on money she didn't earn at all. And then you talk about, of course, how that helps to bring more equality if you do tax on estates, etc. And I was like, I, I was I put my ego aside, and I hope I was humble enough to recognize that that's a better point than the one I was making. And so when I see something that's true, I just change my mind. So I changed my mind on that instantly that day. And so I hope that and believe that I've had the correct position ever since. And so for folks that get wedded to their policy positions and never ever change them, and oftentimes they brag about that. But aren't you just telling on yourself and saying that you don't have an open mind, that you won't even listen to other evidence, or that somehow you are magically right about every single issue from the day you were born? Those that doesn't seem likely. So to me, if somebody points out that I'm wrong, I don't want to stay wrong. I want to change so I get to the correct position.
Thank you. And I want to take a chance to remind everyone to use the Q&A. We already have quite a few questions in there, so definitely send those in. Cenk, if you were a Democratic strategist, I'd love to know what your top 3 recommendations would be for succeeding online and how it would play into legacy media strategy, because, both of those things exist. So how would you play both sides of that?
First of all, you've got to, if you're Democratic politicians and leaders, you've got to let go of the idea that you can control the message completely. So the old way of thinking is, okay, we're going to tell mainstream media what to think, because if you don't know, they put out talking points and then they pressure the reporters, and the reporters have admitted this on air. So, for example, Mika Brzezinski on MSNBC after 2016, she did a segment about, hey, whenever we said that Hillary might not win, Hillary's team would call and browbeat us, and then we would stop saying it. So, wow, that is a startling admission, right? And then I realized later, through a lot of experience that I have with reporters and anchors, et cetera, in DC, when I was on MSNBC as an anchor, I was on Current TV, et cetera, and been all over media. So I found out that, yeah, no, our politicians always demand compliance and obedience from the people that are doing the interviews and reporting on them. And if you think like, oh no, they can't, that sounds too much. That can't be true. Uh, Biden insiders have admitted after the election, including on the Young Turks, that they would tell the reporters what to ask. It's with Biden, because they knew that Biden couldn't handle unscripted questions, and they would have answers ready for Biden. And and so that's, while they all pretend to be great, neutral, objective reporters, that's actually what's happening behind the scenes a lot, way more than you'd expect. So since Democratic politicians kind of got used to that, When they go online, they're like, okay, now who are the people who are going to give us everything we want and never going to question us and just tell everybody how great we are? Okay, that's it. Those are the only guys we're going to support. Well, that those guys aren't going to win online, because what wins online is authenticity. So if you're just a propagandist, you might have a good run, especially during election time when people want rah 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 for their own side. But eventually, online, you always get caught. So you're going to get caught, and then your show's not going to exist anymore. So give people, if whether it's you're deciding if you're going to go on a show, if you're a politician, or you're a strategist and you're deciding what to fund, what not to fund. There's just 100 different ways that you make those decisions. And I would say to them, for God's sake, let people be authentic. It's not going to kill you. Okay. No, you're not going to get what you want all the time, but you're going to get posts and shows that the audience actually trusts. So when they say, yes, vote for this person, that's going to be much more effective. Whereas if they're propagandists, everybody knows they're propagandists. And so all you're doing is preaching to the choir. You're not winning over any new voters. Doesn't make sense. So authenticity is enormously important. And then if you're a politician and you're going online, I don't know if you can do this these days, okay? But please be yourself, whatever that is. So stop taking scripted talking points and repeating them like robots. Like, that stuff works in mainstream media, but that's played out now. So when you do talking points on online shows, it's counterproductive. You look like a robot. So you see me, and I've got 1,000 imperfections, and it's obvious that I'm stating an authentic opinion because it's already probably pissed off a lot of you. Okay, so that's real. That's authentic. That's human. I mean, it's hilarious, but these days we have to counsel our politicians, try to be human.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate all of that, and I think you're probably right. I mean, that assessment. We're gonna have to switch over to audience Q&A pretty soon, but on that point, I do want to play a clip from PBS that I would like to not just share with you, but with our entire audience, which speaks to exactly the point that you are trying to make about being brave and bold to go into those kinds of spaces.
We just did this really big study that looked on online voices and sort of the largest programs, sort of political and and sort of political adjacent, left adjacent, right adjacent. But when you add it all up, the right and right leaning and right adjacent programming accounts for 82% of the major online shows. That's podcasts, that's streaming channels. That's narrative dominance.
And that includes podcasts that aren't overtly political, like sports and comedy podcasts, for instance.
Yeah, that was the part that was the most, to me, surprising and yet disturbing about the study, is that of the 400 plus shows that we looked at, 100 or so of them were non-political, sports, culture. But when you actually looked at an analysis of the program, I mean, you listened to them, you coded them, we found that 72% of them, 72% of explicitly non-political programming contained not only political content, but right-leaning political content. They just branded it or framed it as something different. And that's where this really becomes key, is that is the lens through which people see the world. And so when all of that programming is sort of tilting the scales in favor of the right, the story that the majority of Americans are getting day to day is right-leaning. And I see no better illustration of that gap than if you look at, in particular, what's happening with young people. Young people are accelerating and moving to the right faster than any other demographic. And I don't think it's a coincidence that they just happen to consume online media more than any other demographic does. That's their primary source, and yet they themselves are moving at a faster and faster clip to the right because that landscape is so heavily dominated and saturated by the right.
Clearly that's very worrisome. I think that it's telling that we are finding ourselves in these online media bubbles, and you have done pretty extensive work on trying to break through that, I think to the network's own detriment, to be honest. Last week you had on Marjorie Taylor Greene because you guys wanted to discuss a potential war in Iran. And I remember watching that and being one of the people who was pretty disgusted at first. And then I listened to you say that, well, who has the president's ear? Is it Cenk or is it Marjorie Taylor Greene? And you've You're correct that it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, most likely. And so if you can talk to her about something that's important to you, like being anti-war, then you're able to sort of cross that gap. And so combining those two spaces, as uncomfortable, like truly uncomfortable as it is, and for also, I know one of your hosts, John Idarola, uh, I thought that was commendable, if not difficult. So before we do jump into audience questions, I want to give you an opportunity if you want to just comment on that clip, maybe like 2 minutes.
Yeah. So, first of all, you saw Young Turks right next to Joe Rogan there, one of the biggest circles. But what you might not realize is that two things. One, if you take all of the TYT shows, we're by far the biggest on the left, and the second biggest on the entire chart after Rogan. And so I think it's a little overstated that that it's the right wing is completely dominating. But at the same, and by the way, Rogan was flanked by us and Breakfast Club, and Charlemagne the God's a wonderful ally of ours. And so there's some super strong left wing voices online as well. In fact, when we first started, uh, Young Turks for about a decade was larger than all the right wing shows combined online. But what happened over time? Democrats never supported their media that was on the left because media on the left was progressive and oftentimes criticized some Democratic leaders. So they're like, that's it. Nope. If they're not going to agree with us 100%, starve them. Meanwhile, the Republicans are pouring in billions of dollars, collectively into right-wing media, and they start getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Our side keeps starving us and starving us. And then one day they wake up and it's 72% right wing and they go, gee, how did that happen? Well, it happened because you didn't provide the funding, you didn't provide any of the politicians, the guests, etc. So look, I'm not big on politicians as guests, but overall, they didn't give us any of the resources that we needed, and then eventually the right wing got larger than us. It is deeply frustrating. But okay, now to the point of, well, today it is what it is. If you say, okay, let's shut down online media, that's not a thing. That's never going to work. No one's in favor of it. So please let that pipe dream go. Second of all, mainstream media is partly what created this monster. Do you know that if we go on left-wing shows or say something on our show, it's almost never quoted in mainstream media. But if one of our hosts goes on a right-wing show, it immediately jumps into mainstream media. Mainstream media is such a big cancer. Like if you watch it, I'm sorry, but you have no idea all the different ways that they're deluding you and actually leading you into more right-wing policy positions. So the mainstream media lifts up the right wing so much more than anybody realizes. But finally, given that the situation is 72-28 today, whether we like it or not, should you go into their spaces, their shows, to try to make your case to independents who watch those shows? And yes, maybe even some right wing populists to try to bring them over to your side. Of course you should. Why wouldn't you go and try to convince their own viewers that we're right? I just don't understand that at all. That's just because the old school way of thinking was, oh, well, we are bigger than them and we won't platform them. Well, sad day. Now they're bigger than us. So we're not platforming them, they're platforming us. And so if you say, no, I want to hide in a cave and I don't want to talk to anyone on the right wing, you're hurting the Democratic Party way more than you realize. And you're hurting the left terribly because those independents are never going to hear your voice. They're never going to hear your argument. You've got to get in there and make your case. So, and then lastly on Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I please get out of the mindset of purity. So, do I disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene at least 90% of the time? Of course, of course. Does she say terrible things? Yes, of course. But she happens to agree with us. We don't agree with her. She agrees with us. I mean, if you're a Democrat, you're against the war with Iran, right? We're against needless giant wars in the Middle East, right? So we're not going to her position. She's coming to our position. Now we can say, you know what? I want to be morally pure. So I don't want to be contaminated by Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I won't have a conversation with her, even though she agrees with us. Well, what did you do? You harmed our position because Marjorie, whether we like it or not, and I'm happy to take any allies to stop that war. Hundreds of thousands of lives are on the line, right? So if Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson come to us and say, yes, we're also against the war, and Trump doesn't listen to us, but he listens to them, you have that conversation. You encourage them to be more anti-war. It doesn't mean you trust them and you're a sucker and you go, oh, okay, then since I had one conversation, golly gee, I agree with everything Marjorie Taylor Greene says. No, you're allowed to have a conversation and agree on parts and disagree on parts. Please open up your minds. If you don't, we're never going to win. We've got to re-engage the entire audience, the entire voting base of the country, and win back the middle and win back independence.
Thank you. Do you feel that the Democratic Party in general then needs to be a little bit more forgiving of others? I know that some of our members of our community, they raised a lot of concerns about hosting this event, citing the old blog posts that you had written that were beyond disrespectful to women. And you've spoken openly about evolving politically and personally. So I would just like to give you an opportunity to address some of those concerns.
All right. First of all, I can't stand cancel culture. Okay. If you're Christian out there, go ahead, pick up a stone and throw it at me because you have no sins, right? You've never done anything wrong in your entire life. You're pure as the driven snow. So go ahead, throw the first stone. So, okay. Yes, I wrote blog posts in the 1990s, back when I was a Republican, trying to be a shock jock. Now, first of all, did I write some bad things in there? Yes. Did I apologize for them? Of course. Did I delete them when I got caught? No. I deleted them 15 years earlier. An alt-right figure, Mike Cernovich, and others went and found them in the Wayback Machine, even though they'd been deleted for 15 years when no one saw them. I deleted them on my own because I looked at it and I was like, that's dumb. I don't believe that anymore. And I deleted them, right? They go back and find old deleted blogs from the 1990s. And what does our side do? God, we'd love to fall for their traps. So the minute they smear any person on our side, like Al Franken, oh, they have a picture where he's close to a woman, doesn't even touch her. That's it. Throw him out. Cancel culture. That's it. Cancel him. Don't do that. Al Franken didn't do anything wrong. And Al Franken's way more important than me. So in that case, by the way, the one thing that I'll object to is they were not, there's this now infamous line about how the genes of women are defective or whatever, and they make it seem like I'm a misogynist on it. No, I wrote plenty of bad things, but that was a joke about myself, about how I couldn't get a date in South Beach and how pathetic that was. And I was kidding about, well, if the genes of women were better, then maybe I'd have a chance. And then alt-right disingenuously picked that quote out, and then mainstream media, because they were against Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders had endorsed me, was like, great, I love the alt-right. Again, what does mainstream media do? They take from the right wing all the time. So without questioning it, they took it and pretended that it was a misogynist comment and not a joke about myself. So oftentimes when we're canceling folks, we don't even know what we're canceling them for. We don't know if it's a joke, not a joke. Did they actually do something wrong? Did they not do something wrong? So I'm also not telling you that if somebody on your side is a bad guy, that to ignore it because they're on your side. No, don't do that. If they're actual bad guys, there's got to be accountability. But don't fall into every right-wing trap. Don't fall into every mainstream media trap. So anyway, so I'm happy to take specific questions about it. I'm happy to discuss anything. And one last thing, though. What mainstream media doesn't want is outsiders. So when they see someone who's an outsider and they want to smear them, like Bernie, and they wanted to smear me, not because I was important, but because I was connected to Bernie. And so they go looking for the needle in the haystack of your life. And that's why I said the thing about stones, because we all have needles. You know, a couple of those jokes were inappropriate. And it was right of me to apologize for them. But if you then take that needle and say, oh, Cenk is, you imply heavily, which the New York Times definitely did, and that I'm a right winger because of something I disavowed 15 years ago and was written 20, 25 years ago, and you don't tell them about the haystack, which is that I'm known for being a progressive supporter of Bernie Sanders and being in favor, adamantly so, of women's rights, civil rights, every kind of rights, well, you're purposely lying to your audience. And that's what mainstream media did. And that was an attempt to smear Bernie through me.
Thank you so much, Cenk. This is all very interesting. So in addition to today, the City of Alameda Democratic Club has some great programs coming up. On June 11th, we'll host some of the California Democratic Party delegation to come debrief on the party convention that's happening in Anaheim at the end of the month. Great opportunity for in-depth information on the direction of the party and hopefully how it's shifting. And then June 25th, we're going to have a conversation with Brandon Sutton, a media personality who's host of The Discourse and contributor on the Majority Report. Our website at the moment is going through some updates in preparation for the upcoming midterms. So please email us at alameda.demo, D-E-M-O, @gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook. Evan, did you see if Keegan Tatum from Alameda is on?
Oh, yes. Let's check. I know he's very excited. Yes, he is. Okay, so Keegan, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. So just accept that, and then you should be able to join us.
Yeah, how about I go with my question real quick first?
Sure. Go for it.
So in your program, you critique the mainstream media a lot. Don't you feel that there's some good reporters and legacy outlets that continue to do important work as part of the mix? For example, the staff at Wired who help reveal the inner workings and people behind Doge. Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan at the New York Times helped us forecast what to expect with Trump and Project 2025. And the authors of the Biden cover-up book, authored by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson.
You had me until the end there.
Oh,
So Meredith, great question, and I'm really glad you asked it. Yeah, I don't want people to get the wrong impression. So first of all, if you're on the left, you shouldn't be trying to tear down media, but you should be trying to improve media. So the right wants to tear down any objective media and replace it with their propaganda. We should not do the same. So are there great reporters in the country and in those mainstream media outlets? Definitely. Have there been great stories in the New York Times? Definitely. And I don't want less of that. I want more of that. I want them to do better. Associated Press and Reuters are essential. The Guardian is excellent. I love The Intercept. I think The Lever by David Sirota is great. And by the way, listen to what I'm saying. Please do likewise support one another. So if you see a great organization like The Lever or The Intercept or now Drop Site News run by Ryan Grimm and Jeremy Scahill, uplift them and make sure that you're telling people about it. So I don't have a problem with that. I love that. But two things can be true at the same time. So the New York Times can write a brilliant expose on something, but then their political reporter can do a hatchet piece on Bernie Sanders. So we've got to have nuance. It's the world is not binary where everyone in the New York Times is evil and a liar. No way. Or they're all angels and everything they write is perfect. No way. And the answer is somewhere in the middle. And not perfectly in the middle. So we're along the spectrum. And so here, I'll give you another part of that smear job they did on me. They said that I had a long history of being anti-Muslim. They left out the fact that I'm Muslim. So you would be shocked at how biased the political reporting at the New York Times, CNN, etc. Like if you've never experienced it, it's hard to believe. But they do. They just, if they don't agree with you politically, they will smear you to no end. And then another part of the paper will write a brilliant story about a vaccine, and I'll be fascinated by it and send it to my friends. So let's support good journalists.
All right. Thanks. Keegan, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, what's up, Cenk? Hey, thanks for tuning in for us, man. I really appreciate it. We're a tiny little town, so appreciate it. Anyway, yeah, my
No
name is
problem.
Keegan. Obviously, like a huge reason why Democrats lost was because the online right is so much better funded, right? In addition to all the coordination with mainstream media and the Republican Party that you mentioned. Now, I make videos about political psychology. And boy, let me tell you, if I was conservative with 130,000 followers between my Instagram and TikTok, and I built that in less than a year and a half, I guarantee that I would be raking in some of that sweet, sweet right-wing sugar daddy money. But because I'm on the left, nothing. I'm sure you get the experience. So, what do we do for the lefty creators whose channels don't make enough money to pay the bills? At least yet. Because without some help, dude, a lot of people are going to give up, not even try, not even start something, or aren't able to do this full time,
Thank you.
which is
Cenk?
bad. So what do we do?
Yeah, Keegan, thank you for the question, and I'm super happy to be here. If I could, I'd talk to every Democratic club in the country. So the question you're asking is a super tough one, and the phenomenon you're talking about is right. Like, we have 28 million subscribers, and sometimes we struggle to pay the bills. If we were on the right, oh my God, we would be spectacularly wealthy. We would be unimaginably wealthy with 28 million subscribers, and money pours into the right wing. So we had a reporter here once who used to be on the right, and he actually started up Newsbusters, is one of the largest, uh, you know, media fact checking organization on the right. It was nonsense, and he was deep in the right. And then he started writing a book about the right wing and how right they were. And then, bless his heart, in the middle of writing the book, he realized, turns out we're not right. And then he went over to the left. Amazing guy. And when I talked to him, he said the number one difference between the right and the left is when we were in the right, we had pools of money and like money everywhere. You come to the left, you just starve. There's no money for anything. And that's why it's so frustrating when they say, like, oh yeah, Soros finances everything. Where's this legendary Soros? And what's he financing? So he's certainly not financing you, brother, right? So are they finding the guys with 130,000 views or subscribers, etc.? No, they're not finding. And look, they're not bad people. Like, the Soros folks are not bad people. They're good people. They are trying to do their best. And as the fracking billionaires and all these other right wingers finance all the right wing shows, is it okay for Soros to finance some of the left wing shows? Of course it's okay. Well, why do we have to do unilateral surrender? I don't agree with that at all. But is there a giant cavalry headed in your direction? Unfortunately, there isn't. No. So, and there's a reason for that, by the way, because when you invest into what they view as not news but marketing, on the right, you're going to get a good return on investment. You pay off, Ben Shapiro or whoever, and they tell everybody how great tax cuts are. Tax cuts pass. What you gave the Daily Wire in that hypothetical is nothing compared to the millions and millions you saved in taxes. Whereas on the left, people give out of the goodness of their heart, and oftentimes against their own economic interest. And so that's just not as sustainable as a profit-making machine, which is what a lot of right-wing media is, because it's marketing for the rich and powerful.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Keegan. So I wanted to ask another question yes, this is really great. Well, I say that without having read the whole thing. So here we go.
That's okay. Here we go.
In terms of reaching Christian evangelicals, can you comment on how we can get our message into Christian/Catholic media, such as the Eternal World Television Network that reaches 350 million homes across the globe? Yeah, let's just stick with that.
Yeah. So in a sense, I couldn't be less right person to answer this question. But I think that I have a decent enough answer. The reason I say that is because I grew up Muslim, my family's Muslim, my background is Muslim, and I'm very proud of that. Um, just as a matter of ideology, philosophy, and religion, I studied the religions to the best of my ability and decided that I'm an atheist. So I don't think an atheist with a Muslim background is going to get invited to a lot of Christian evangelical conversations. So that's why I joked that I might be the worst person to answer this question. But putting the kidding aside, it doesn't matter where you are. But especially if you're a Christian evangelical, please go and have those conversations. And what I would counsel you to say is, my God, are these leaders giving Christianity a bad name? And we have a lot of Christians in our audience. And of course, first of all, we have Christians overall, but what I mean is devout Christians. And they tolerate my atheism and I love them for it. Uh, but and we talk about it all the time. Like, if the only view of Christianity you saw was, for example, the prosperity preachers. Oh, God wants you to give me 12 private jets. Give me all your money. God loves money. And God hates gay people, and God hates these guys, and God hates those guys. You'd be like, wow, religion is so toxic. Christianity is terrible, right? So if you're a good Christian, don't let them be the only voice. Make sure you're out there saying, no, Christianity is to help the poor, the needy. Jesus would have been despised by Fox News. He said, give up all of your worldly possessions and come join me and help the poor and the needy. They would have called him a Marxist, socialist, communist. And that's a fact. So go out there wherever you are. And I love that question because that's in the religious sphere, but whether it's religious, political, economic, any sphere you're in, go please and make our case for us. You don't have to win everyone over. You don't have to be amazing. Just go out there and be our voice in that community.
Great. Can we do some lightning round style questions?
Yeah, let's try.
Okay, perfect. So how can we join TYT's Operation Hope?
Oh, well, I love that question. So Operation Hope is something we started well before the election. And what we wanted to do was give people a little bit of hope because it was dark times. So it's all volunteers from the Young Turks audience. And before the election, they came up with it. We come up with ideas together. And they came up with the idea of doing like Trump Madness, like March Madness, 64 of the worst things he's ever said, biggest lies, most outrageous things. And then we did brackets and we voted and decided what the most outrageous thing was. So that was a fun little idea, but we also do serious stuff. We called to get a money out of politics ballot measure passed in Maine, and it passed, and we were super proud of that. And now we're supporting what we're calling the populist plank. Those are the most popular policies of the Democratic Party, and we're trying to get folks to sign on to it. So far, Ro Khanna has, Marie Newman, who is a former congressman from Illinois, has signed on. J.D. Scholten, and even Dan Osborne, an independent from Nebraska, has signed on. So it's like the best people on earth trying to do goodness in the world. So I love those guys, and I'm super proud of them. And we do it together. And we just had a meetup for Operation Hope in Chicago.
So how do
Anyway,
people
if you
join?
Yeah, sorry. If you want to help, tyt.com/hope. And by help, it just means come on one of our Zoom calls, see if you like it, see if you want to participate and try to bring some positive change in the world. So tyt.com/hope.
We have a question from a young Democrat that would like to know how they can help promote strong progressive leadership in the party.
Yeah, look, I encourage everybody to volunteer because if you're a really energetic volunteer and you do great work, you'll just keep rising up. I mean, like, there's a guy, Michael, in Operation Hope. The minute you need a website, the brother's got it built in like, I don't know, less than 24 hours. I don't know how he does it. He creates all these miraculous things on the spot. Now we're getting video editors, etc. So whether it's Operation Hope or I started a pack called Rebellion Pack for economic populism. That's the economic wing of the Bernie coalition. And so go to rebellionpack.com. But you forget us. Anything that you think makes sense. Get in the game somehow. So if you think there's another group that does better, another pack that does better, another show that does better, get involved somehow. Volunteer, move up the ranks. And then eventually, by the way, when you do that, people notice you. And then they ask you to do the next thing and the next thing. And so there's a ton of ways to help. Well, the one thing I knew I couldn't do lightning round because I talk too much. Okay, so the one last thing on that though. So there's a lot of fear right now in the country, especially obviously among Democrats. Don't give into the fear because it saps you of your energy. And if you just sit back down on the couch, then Trump's going to win. So instead of fear, focus on hope. And if you all have hope in your hearts, then we're invincible. We'll all rise up and we'll definitely win.
Thank you for that. I would also just add that it's so much easier than people think to start volunteering for organizations. Like with, City of Alameda Democratic Club, this is totally volunteer work. And I also volunteer just doing other things throughout the city that I never thought would be I just figured somebody else was doing them, and people often really want help. And to that same effect, we have a local leader of the Alameda Native History Project that's been watching, and he has submitted a question. It is a bit of a long question, and so Gabriel, and I haven't read it, so hopefully it's good for us to wrap up soon. But it says, our local Ohlone tribe, Mwekma, recently exposed individuals using fake tribal identities to get land and funding. Cities like Alameda continue to platform these groups even after being corrected by the actual tribe. How can independent media like TYT help challenge this performative inclusion and push progressives to stop enabling the harm? Gabriel, yes, that was a great question. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's such a good question. It's really hard to answer. So look, I think that there's a lot of folks who, play the identity game to try to get stuff for themselves. And in this case, it seems like a particularly loathsome thing to do. So in the independent media is so underfinanced. It's so hard to do all of the important stories in the country. So and the algorithms are brutal. And so what happens, guys, is that the algorithms reward consistency. So, and oftentimes that just leads into extremism because we get the audience capture phenomenon, and the algorithm says, give me more. And they wind up rabbit holing into some oftentimes extremism, but also very specific niches. So then when you ask them to talk about an important issue like that, it's hard to do. And even if you do it, the it's such a double whammy because we do a lot of stories that we think are the right stories. Like the Republicans are trying to cut Medicaid, so we did a story about that on yesterday's show. And so, but we know the algorithm's not going to like that story because what the algorithm wants is purely anti-Trump stories these days. It keeps changing, right? So if you do a story about these bad guys who are pretending to be in your tribe and they're not, even if you put it on a super popular channel, it won't get any views. So and these are the things that we struggle with every day. So the way you're seeing the world is unfortunately not wrong. It's so hard for those stories to get on. And one of the things I can't stand about mainstream media is they think if you have status, money, power, privilege, a title, then you matter, and you're a person they should quote. You're a person they should take seriously, right? But if you're an outsider and you don't have power, then they don't take you seriously, even if you're right. And that's super frustrating. The local papers should be all over that story, but oftentimes they're the ones who don't cover it at all.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I know we are at time. So unless Meredith, was there any other questions or anything you wanted to add in real quick?
I just wanted to point out that our representative in Congress was the only one who voted against the Iraq War, Barbara Lee. She's
Oh yeah,
from our district, so.
yeah, yeah. I know Barbara a little bit, and I have enormous respect for her. You know how
Yeah.
much courage it took to be 1 versus 534,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I will always have infinite respect for her because of that. So you guys are lucky. You have a great representative, and that is rare these days.
Well, thank you, Cenk. I also want to thank your team, Leah Shover, Julie Avancenia Napial, Kara Eastman, and of course, Anna Kasparian, who was not able to join us tonight. And thank you to all of the CADC members and visitors alike. We hope to continue more of this conversation later on. Take care.